Alrighty, so we are sitting down to do another one-shot review. The movie that I watched today was The Children of the Corn. This is the older version of it because apparently there's a new version that I'm also seeing on Amazon Prime. But this is the old Stephen King movie. I don't have a lot to say about this. It was pretty straightforward. It's like many other sort of movies that follow this Stephen King style, but I did enjoy it. It's a little bit late at night and it's been a while since I filmed the video, so it's probably going to take me a second to get into the groove. But what happens in this movie? Essentially, there is these two people that are on a road trip, and he's like, I guess going to be a doctor or something like that. And they're driving, and at the very beginning of the movie, you see this scene where all the children basically take over the town and kill a bunch of the adults, which is pretty crazy to begin with. But then, these two people are trying to get to wherever they're going, and they're going to be driving through this town that the children have taken over. And we don't really know much about what's going on or why they're doing it or anything like that. We just know that it has to do with the cornfields and that they hate the adults and that it's some sort of weird cult religious type thing. Then another thing that happens is while they're on their journey, they're trying to stop for gas or something like that, and they come across this guy who just gives them a bunch of weird answers, and later also pretty much gets murked by the kids. And this is very much the beginning of the film. But we also find out that this girl Sarah who is one of the little kids that survived all this stuff that's going on in their town. She has like these visions, and she writes out, like pictures of the future that's about to happen involving the killings of these kids, killing all these adults, and whatever's connected to this situation. So that's basically the setup for the story. That's what's going on. And as you would imagine, these two people on their trip, these two adults, they get stuck in this town, and then they're eventually persecuted by the kids themselves, and that turns into being basically the whole movie. So I don't really feel like I have to spoil it to talk about what I like and don't like about the movie, so I'm going to just leave it open like that. I will tell you right now that it pretty much ends how you would imagine it to end, but that's about it. So what are the things that I like about this movie? I like the style that it has, even though it is kind of like old-timey or dated a little bit. And what I mean is that there's this certain like aspect to all these films that are made about Stephen King books, where they capture the same vibe that I get from the Goosebumps TV series, the old one, in just that I can tell that we're talking about a fictional story that took place in a novel for some reason. I don't know why. But at the same time, they're still able to layer in a lot of like the creepiness and the seriousness and stuff like that. And maybe it's just because the writing is from a novel and it's very heavily adapted from the source material. And maybe I'm just like, I haven't read the book, so this is all speculation. And maybe that just makes it a much tighter screenplay and it comes off that way. But they just have this certain aspect to them, and I think that did well for this movie. Another thing I liked about this movie is that the concept of the children, taking over and the whole town and killing all their parents and stuff like that, that's a very shocking and interesting concept. I think that it's very provocative for a lot of people, just given, how much people still talk about Lord of the Flies and stuff like that. Not that has anything to do with that, but just the idea of like children running their own weird, corrupted, cult-like government. I think that's just an interesting concept to explore in general. I think the actors were all right in this movie. They're a little bit cheesy. They had the girl from Terminator 2. She did fine, but everybody else was kind of a little bit goofy. And then they had this child actor that was like the prophet, and he did an awesome job, just being creepy and all that kind of stuff. So that's pretty much the way that, I think the movie, the way it plays out, it makes a lot of sense, even though, you know, if there were to be some things I feel meh about, one of them is that the main male character is kind of like this weird know-it-all. And even though I can kind of see where he's coming from in the way of like when faced with this situation, a lot of us, at least guys who are in shape and stuff like that, would be like, oh, so basically you're telling me I have to overpower a bunch of kids. Like, yeah, it's going to be tough. They have a bunch of weapons, but he wasn't immediately terrified of them. But at the same time, he also just was like displaying that entire embodiment of like, oh, I just know what to do. He wasn't even like asking people for opinions or anything like that. He was just like, I'm going to do this now. It just came off kind of weird as everything was playing out. But it ended up working out, and he ended up knowing the answer. So I guess in that way, it's like, I guess you trust him, but that was just a little bit weird for me. What I also didn't like about the movie was just and you know, honestly, it's not a big deal, and that's why I'll say I do like this movie a lot, but some of the scenes with the child actors were a little bit silly, just the way that they were conveying certain stuff, and then as well the way that certain action shots were done, and especially this big explosion that happens at the end. It's just very dated. To see it nowadays, it's a little bit jarring, but nothing too bad. Nothing that's really that big of a deal. And I guess even to flip back to stuff I like, there is a big twist in this, and spoiler alert, it is demonic, and it has like, you know, real monster behind it and stuff like that. And I think that twist was awesome, especially when the Isaac kid comes back. And that's a big spoiler, sorry everybody. But especially when that kid comes back to get the other guy, Malachi, and then take him down, and then that kind of starts the final battle. I thought that was an awesome way to sort of shift the plot forward, even though it felt like it was done. It kind of came back in a meaningful way, if that makes sense. So I really enjoyed that as well. So, you know, without really getting into the nitty gritty about everything that's going on with this movie, I guess I can just say that, you know, if I'm plugging it into the where you should see it score, I think if for some reason you had the ability to see it in theaters, it might be kind of fun, but it's not one of those ones I'm going to be jumping out of my skin to go see in one of these events or something like that. But not because there's anything wrong with it. I just think that, you know, it's just a good movie. It's not anything you would want to put in like a pantheon of crazy freaking movies, but I think that if you were asking somebody, you know, what's a list of 100 horror movies that you should watch by the time you die, this would definitely be on the list. So with that being said, you know, plugging it into the 5-point system, I would say this one comes in at a strong 3, and it was a lot of fun. I liked watching it, and I think if you're interested in this sort of messed up storyline of like these kids taking over the town and becoming murderers for this false god and stuff like that, I think you'll really enjoy this movie, and I cannot recommend it enough. So that being said, feel free to comment, like, subscribe. Sorry if I was too quiet in this video. It is a little bit late right now, and I'm trying to be courteous of everybody else. But that being said, that's the video. That's Children of the Corn, a film adapted from a Stephen King short story. And there you go.